Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. Filmed over 8 years, this 5-part documentary series from director Debra Granik combines a story of grit, survival, and redemption in an incisive look at the harms of Americans' prison industrial complex. The film is called Conbody versus Everybody, and we're joined today by the director, Debra Granik. Debra, welcome back to Cinemophile.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Once again, just beautiful work. There's a lot of themes in this that I want to explore, but just the raw story of Coss Marte and how you got to know him. Where did this come into your life? How did it come into your life?
I very much wanted to do a project about how people stay out of prison. Many narratives and documentaries do address recidivism, which is the return to prison, either through recommitting a crime or through the re-ensnarement in the criminal justice system, which is very easy to have that happen, that re-ensnarement. And the question to me was, it is very hard to stay out. What's it going to take? And when I found someone who was actively going through reentry, who was actively returning from a New York State correctional facility to the city of New York, to the neighborhood he was from, and he said, yes, this is going to be the challenge of my life. It's high stakes. I want to succeed at this. I don't know exactly what it's going to entail, but I am interested in saying yes to creating some kind of chronicle about this experience. And that's how we began. And, I always say with a documentary like this, it's a sort of mutual vetting. He's trying to figure out what are my motives? Why do I want to tell this and work on this story with him? What do I bring to it? While I'm vetting, does he really want to do this? How do I explain where I'm coming from, how we might proceed? What are his terms and conditions for consent on this project? And you navigate those things when you're asking someone who has a different life experience if they want to join forces to try to tell a story about that experience that the maker doesn't have firsthand.
I got involved in criminal justice reform. I was the campaign director for a ballot initiative here in California to amend the California Three Strikes Law. So I had an insight, an opportunity to get to know people like Coss. For me, so much of what they're talking about rings true just from what I learned, what I gleaned from my time around this issue. So there's so much here that I hope that people watching Conbody versus Everybody will understand that it's so many different ways you can be tripped up, so many different ways you can fail at an attempt to reconcile your life, reconcile yourself with the people that you love and know and the harm that you've caused. It is such a difficult path to walk. So I can understand anyone's trepidation about being involved in something that would shine a light on all of these things. So was that some of the was there any of that in terms of how he approached this, or he seems fearless about it, to be honest?
With Coss,
Yeah.
he takes a position that's extremely provocative all across a lot of different arenas of our lives, which is that I'd rather be forward about who I am than to hide my past. I'd rather tell you about it than be discovered or found out. I'd rather we have a discussion versus you having to make a lot of assumptions about me or frankly be afraid of me. I'd rather if I could tell you about who I am and what I've learned on my journey, we have a foundation for moving forward. I won't always be a person with a state ID number that corresponds to the crimes I did. I will be someone who has experienced a lot of growth inside. I'm not the person I was at 19 or 18 or 16, 23, whatever year. And I'd like you to meet me now and see where we can go from here.
Yeah. This was an 8-year journey, and I'm sure it was a journey in many ways. I don't want to give too much away because I think so much of this film's power is in discovery of where this path is taking these people. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that right in the middle of this, in a manner of speaking, COVID hit. and the complications that created. Are you, should I be bringing that into the conversation, Deborah?
Oh, I think that's fine to bring it in because it was a very incisive moment for all kinds of labor and work, right? Do we have jobs? Do we have places to report? Filmmaking was one of those weird ones where large shoots had to be shut down for sure, but there was still an option for those who had no cushion and were going to continue to live in their dwellings in the heart of New York City, which was really hit hard. There was not much option other than to try to carry on and not be snuffed out by COVID, right? So Coss said, Deb, I know filming has ceased. We're going to carry on. We don't have a cushion. It's part of the story. I think we need to show us surviving this. And I really agreed with that. And when a crew is comprised of three people, camera, sound, and a person coordinating shoot, me, um, it is possible with that kind of footprint outdoors. We met Coss in the park. He had relocated to the park as a survival technique.
Yeah.
The gym was closed, and we said, so I'm not gonna say too much more about it because, as you say, there's going to be people that want to see the film. But yes, I did feel we had to include, because the other thing I want to mention is COVID wasn't just COVID. COVID was another national infection, which instead of Wuhan or some other city an infection that showed itself in Minneapolis, Minnesota. During the height of COVID, some policing got out of control. Excessive police violence was deployed. A person was killed, murdered in that situation. And the BLM movement had a resurge, and it had to, despite the peril of the actual virus being amidst us, we couldn't, many people couldn't stop the need to take to the streets. So there were two kind of, I want to say, urgencies that were happening simultaneously, and they had to be recorded.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about filmmaking, storytelling, is these things that who could have anticipated what would happen over the course of you documenting the life of Coss Marte and the people in his life, that this would happen. And just as you so eloquently put it, that is exactly this sickness. We have a sickness in our society, and especially when it comes to people who have been incarcerated, mostly people of color, which is another whole layer to it. But you found, by the luck of filmmakers like yourself, someone who embodies the best elements of people that we want to admire. He's a quiet leader, but he's determined. He seems to be brutally honest about himself and the life he's in, and all the rest of it. So he is a very compelling person, but there are other people, Derek, Sultan.
Yes.
There's so many other people that we get to meet who humanize what you just described as this sickness that we have in this country, this unforgiving nature that we have in our society. So I always say this about documentary filmmakers: trusting your instincts, knowing when you see a good story, and somehow, some way, often you're rewarded for those instincts, and you really were in this film.
Mm. And, I think when you start a project, but I think you have some participants who start to feel that they have skin in the game, then the story can really be following things that matter to them. And they can say things that matter to them, and they can sharpen some of their thoughts and use, their, I'm going to say, heart and soul to try to express some of that. And so that did bring enormous rewards, because if you don't have firsthand experience, the collaboration has to be intricate and profound for the film to work, to come together.
This must have been a difficult shoot for some of the reasons we've talked about already, but just the sheer staying with it. It seems like 8-year period is an awfully long time, and many things can happen along the way. And we see a lot of those things happen here. But Coss is resilient. He's open. He's just a wonderful subject. And then the people, and you can say a lot about somebody, you can tell a lot about somebody by the people who are attracted into his orbit, that for whatever reason, what they see in him and what he sees in the people who are helping him along the way. There's really a lot here for people to kind of digest in terms of our perceptions. And yeah,
I
wonderful.
strongly agree, of course, because
Yeah.
I got, very drawn in that in just the ways for just the reasons you've said. And I think you also start to realize this radial, I want to say it's like this very impressive diagram of how a person is then also been shaped by the streets they were born onto and into their mom, right?
Yeah.
Just all these factors, her undying faith that if he kept showing up, if he kept trying, he would get past that 26-year mark of, where often men report that a lot of bad decision making can happen in those early years of the 20s and the late teens, a lot of impulsivity, a lot of patterns that are hard to break, a lot of a lot of lures, a lot of temptations about how fast money can be made and what black markets are, in terms of underground economies. And so, it takes a lot of faith to keep showing up, at the prison gate at the visiting hours for your son and decide that, that you're going to, keep asking him,
Yeah.
what's it going to take, son? What's it going to take? And I think same with the streets. And then, of course, the unexpectedness of having Coss's brother. When you talked about gifts that get hurled at a storyteller,
Yes.
oh my goodness. All of a sudden, we're walking down the street, Coss's brother's having people sign a petition. And I was like, what is this, Coss? He's like, oh, yeah, I didn't tell you. My brother's interested in trying to become a political leader of this neighborhood. I was like, what? And thus it became a pretty big strand in the film
Yeah.
as Chris Marte, step by step, block by block, grew a constituency that wanted him to represent this Chinese Latino neighborhood. And it was just lucky that he's Dominican and happens to speak Mandarin, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, there you go. I mean, that's another great example, and you see it in this film. I just want to remind our listeners that we are speaking with Debra Granik. She is the director of this five-part documentary series called Conbody versus Everybody. It is premiering on the Criterion Channel, I believe on May 1st. I think I have that right, May 1st.
Yes, yes.
And five-part series. And it's enthralling from the beginning through the end. Truly, this reminds me, and I don't want to be too grandiose, so please indulge me here. But there's a little bit of hoop dreams in the telling of this story. And because I mean, in addition to so many other things that are wonderful about the film, just as you described, we just had this amazing story drop in almost out of nowhere into the film. And also the people that he has surrounded himself with have been there for the most part, lived the life that he did when he was in prison. And to see manifest itself in the film, who are not only there to help, to be a part of it, they're there to actively make sure that this works because they have skin in the game. And just pull. There's so much here. I'll keep saying that because I want people to understand that this is a terrific series, documentary series. I'll call it a series, right? Five-part series.
Yeah. Some
And
people have called it like an urban novel in 5 chapters
well, there you go.
because, I know it's no secret that I adore Dickens and love to see what happens when you follow characters close enough when they are so hell-bent on their survival. They don't hustle, they don't eat. That's a phrase that you hear throughout the film. So to see people who are forging ahead against a lot of odds, using their smarts, using their savvy, using what they've learned from the streets to enact their survival, that's to me, the grit of the urban novels that I have so treasured as a reader, and as someone who appreciates that stakes are frequently, do I have a place to lay my head? Do I have money to get to work? These
Yeah,
stakes became depicted and conveyed by characters that you begin to feel attracted to. You realize that the stakes are so real because every bit of that puzzle needs to be in place for that survival to be in any way assured. Yeah.
absolutely true. For people who may or may not know that you're responsible for some remarkable narrative films, including Down to the Bone, Winter's Bone, Leave No Trace, and other films, that there is a certain thread here thematically in that someone who is facing adversity and finds it within themselves, going back to Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone and Leave No Trace, with just terrific performances. That's two of the greatest performances. I think it's a tremendously overlooked film, in my opinion, that you got from the actors in that film as well. Our heroes, or the people in the film, are reliant on themselves to how would you put your in a sort of a thematic context for the
I think you're right on point. I think I know that I start to really root for and get very drawn into a life in which no one's guaranteeing that person's survival. There's not a cushion, and they have to use a lot of internal resources to make the next day happen and to be able to think their own thoughts. And there's just intrinsic nobility in the humans among us who are forging their lives in that way. And I can never turn away from such a story. It's like in real life and in the filmmaking process, and so therefore that does become a part of, I believe, every story I attempt to tell.
yeah.
As they say, I think you nailed it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this terrific film, Conbody versus Everybody. And also, I want a quick shout out to your team, including Anne Rossellini, as well as a couple of things. Your cinematographers had to be, right in the right place at the right time. And it seems like they captured so many, incredible moments. So Eric Phillips, Horst, Kafenste Johnson, Sean Hanley, and your editor, because this had to be.
She must be mentioned. Victoria Stewart. People recognize that as this film plays. We had a screening of all 5 episodes in a marathon here in New York City. And I was so touched that the audience understood, the entire audience understood what level of feat Victoria accomplished by organizing and loving and sticking with this footage over a decade of her working life at great painstaking care, with such affection for the moments that were lived during that decade, and always trying to organize it in a way that people could come to the story, making it very accessible is what I want to say. In terms of nonfiction, we're calling it a nonfiction narrative, because if you follow a decade, there is a narrative inbuilt. The country changes, the people change, criminal justice reform changes. So there is an intrinsic narrative in a longitudinal portrait of time.
And beautifully done. Thank you, Debra. Thank you so much for all of your work, including Conbody versus Everybody. It's being released on Criterion May 1st. Be looking for it. And I'd love to see another theatrical release or two, maybe on the West Coast. Maybe we can get something out here. So all the best.
We're game. We're game to bring it out, and members of Conbody could come out, and we're happy to share. Absolutely. And thank you for the way you discuss films and the care you take. It means a lot to the filmmaker.
Thank you.
Posse.
Thank you. You made my day. Thank you so very, very much. You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.